Read this as a single continuous narration by James only. Keep the delivery emotionally rich, dramatic, cinematic, and immersive. Maintain one consistent narrator voice from start to end. Keep pauses minimal, transitions tight, and pacing slightly fast to sustain listener attention. Avoid multi-speaker performance, avoid character voice switching, and avoid long silences. Script. The first time Daniel realized he could really hear her breathing, he was sitting in a plastic chair beside a hospital bed in a room that smelled like bleach and something sweet he couldn't quite name. The monitors ticked. The IV dripped. Outside the window, the parking lot lights flickered on one by one, each one a small, cold star against the early dark of November. Mira was asleep, or somewhere near asleep. Her hand lay on the white sheet, palm up, the way it always did when she was tired from being brave. Her fingers had gotten thinner over the past 6 months. He could see the bones now, every little ridge, and he thought that he had memorized her hands when they were young, warm, chapped from garden soil, always dusted with flour on Sundays. And now he was being asked to memorize them again. A different woman, the same hands. He counted her breaths. He had started doing this 3 days ago, and it embarrassed him, the way it would have embarrassed him when he was 25 and convinced that counting meant control. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. The rhythm of a woman who had agreed to die slowly so he could get used to it. He didn't believe in God. He hadn't believed since he was 19, and his own father had slipped out of a hospital room in his sleep, and Daniel had felt nothing. Just a flat refusal of miracles. The quiet arrogance of a young man who had no idea what he was refusing. He believed in God now. He believed in God the way you believe in a tree you cannot see when you are lost in a dark wood. You don't argue with it. You just walk toward it. "Please," he whispered, so low that Mira couldn't have heard, and he wasn't even sure he was speaking. Just one more minute, one more season. Whatever you're willing, whatever is left. I'll take whatever is left." The nurse came in at 11, a young woman named Quint, with a small floral tattoo on her wrist and the kind of tired eyes that made Daniel want to apologize for keeping her awake. She checked the drip, looked at the numbers, and Daniel tried to read her face the way he had spent a lifetime reading faces. In plans, in contracts, in the small talk of men who built large things. "Same?" he asked. "Same," she said. When she left, he sat a long time in the silence. Then he turned to his wife and whispered the name he had first said in his head 23 years ago, on a morning when a woman he didn't know yet was laughing at something in a book that would change his life. 13 days earlier, in a coffee shop on a corner that didn't exist anymore, Mira had been reading a paperback with a cracked spine, and she had laughed at something on the page. Not politely, not to be seen, but the real laugh, the one that comes from somewhere you cannot rehearse. And Daniel had felt the room tilt. He didn't say her name that day. He said it 2 days later, when he found the book she had left behind on the table, and he walked 40 minutes to her apartment because she had scribbled her address on a napkin tucked inside. Mira Oduya, Apt 3B. She had answered the door in slippers with holes in them and said, "You're the quiet one." He had laughed. "I'm not quiet. I'm just not loud." "Same thing in this building," she said, and stepped aside. He had thought, this is the woman I'm going to build a life with. Not decided, thought, as if it had already happened and he was just walking into it. Within a year, they were married. Within 3, they had a small apartment with a draft by the kitchen window and a poster of a map of the world Mira had thumbtacked above the desk where she answered emails for an NGO. Within 5, they had the blueprints for a house Daniel was drawing on Sundays at the kitchen table, and a daughter whose name they had written on a chalkboard in the nursery before she was even born. Lily. He didn't want to go there. He pushed the word away like a stone he had been pushing for 8 years, but the stone refused to roll. It sat in his chest. She was 7 the last time he saw her alive. The truth was small in the way that cancers are small before the doctors find them. 8 years ago, on a Tuesday in June, Lily was 7. Mira was at a hospital appointment, a follow-up for a kidney stone that turned out to be nothing. Daniel was working from home. He had a deadline. He had a client he could not lose. He had a 3 o'clock call with a man in Singapore whose money kept the firm alive through the recessions. Lily had asked to go to the pond. "Just to look," she had said. She said just to look in the way a child says a thing she means, because she didn't yet know how to lie about her wants. She had wanted to touch the water. She had wanted to put her sandals on the dock and watch her reflection wobble. He had said yes, He had also said, "Stay where I can see you," and he had picked up the phone. And he had told himself, 15 minutes, Lily. 15 minutes. And he had put the call on mute once when she laughed at a frog, and he had smiled at the sound, and he had unmuted the call, and the client's voice had come back, fast and businesslike, talking about a column line that needed to move, and Daniel had moved it on his screen, and the call had run 47 minutes instead of 15. Because the architect who made the client feel safe was the architect who got the next job, and Daniel had always been that architect. He had not heard the splash. He had heard her absence. He had looked up and seen the empty dock and the sandals still lying on it, and understood, in a single, slow-motion portion of his life, that something had happened that could not unhappen. He was the one who found her. He was the one who pulled her out. He was the one who rode in the ambulance with his hand pressed against her small chest, counting her breaths, the way he now counted Mira's breaths. The same counting, the same desperate arithmetic. Just one more. Just one more. But the breaths didn't come back, and they never came back. And the doctor in the emergency room had said words that Daniel could repeat to this day without slipping into a trance. Because if he slipped, he would not come back either. The lie began that night. Daniel sat on the edge of the bathtub in their house, the house he had drawn, the house Lily had never slept in, and Mira sat on the bed with her coat still on. The question she asked was the kindest question anyone had ever asked him. "Was it the phone?" she said. "Yes," he said. He had answered, in that moment, in the only way a man in shock could answer. The word had come out before he could decide what to do with it. And it was true, the way a lie can be true. It was not the phone that killed his daughter. It was not the client's column line. But yes, there had been a phone in his hand. Yes, there had been a voice in his ear. Mira had nodded slowly, the way a person nods when they accept something they cannot hold all at once. "Did the call matter?" she had asked. "No." "Then it didn't kill her," she had said. "It was an accident. It would have happened whether you were on the phone or not." He had nodded. He had let her believe that. He had let her believe it because he loved her, and because letting her believe it was the only way he could keep walking. He had accepted her forgiveness for a sin he had not confessed, and each time she absolved him, he felt the structure of their life lean a little harder on a lie. He had tried once, 6 months after Lily. He had driven to the cemetery on the anniversary and sat in the car with the engine off, and he had rehearsed the words into the rearview mirror. "Mira, I was on the call. The call went long. I was the one who was supposed to be watching her." The mirror didn't flinch. The mirror held the words. Then he had driven home, and she had hugged him in the driveway, and she had said, "Thank you for going to see her." And he had pressed his face into her hair and nodded. And he had chosen, in that moment, not to break her. That was how he had lived with it. Not for himself, for her. "If I confess now, she will have to carry the knowledge that I let our daughter die, while I was selling a column line. She will die inside it, and she deserves the mercy of my silence." He had been a coward, and he had called it love. At 2 a.m, Daniel stood at the curb outside the hospital and looked at a small park across the street. A duck pond with a fountain on a timer. The kind of ordinary public space that no one notices until they're watching it for the wrong reasons. A woman walked past with a child on her shoulders. The child was laughing, the way children laugh at nothing, at the height, at the wind, at the small joy of being carried. Daniel watched them disappear into the parking garage, and he thought, the world is full of people carrying a child past the kind of water that took their brother from a stranger once. He went back inside. He brought 2 coffees to the nurse's station. The night nurse, Quint, was taking a chart. He set a cup on her keyboard without a word. "You didn't have to," she said. "I wanted to," he said. "She woke up while I was gone?" "Just a few minutes. She asked where you were. I told her you were getting coffee. She said, 'Tell him to come back and stop counting my breaths.' Said it with her whole voice, Mr. Hale." He laughed. It surprised him so much he covered his mouth. He walked down the hall and pushed open the door, and Mira was sitting up slightly, her eyes open, the color he had crossed oceans to look at when they were younger. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she said. Her voice was thin, scraped down to a whisper. "You breathe loud." "I'll breathe quieter." "Don't." She raised her hand an inch off the sheet. He took it. Her fingers were cold. He pressed them between both of his hands the way you press a bird you've found in the snow. He sat on the edge of the bed. "Daniel," she said. "Mira, listen to me." His chest tightened. She said listen to me the way she said it when she had something important, a confession, a piece of herself she wanted him to hold. He nodded. He watched her. He tried not to count her breaths. "I need to ask you something." "Okay." "Did you bring her to the pond?" The room went very quiet. The monitors still ticked. The IV still dripped. But the air went quiet in a way air doesn't usually go quiet. The way it goes quiet in a courtroom just before the verdict, or in a kitchen just before the phone rings. He didn't answer. "Daniel." Her voice was the same, patient. The patience of a woman who had carried him for 23 years. "I need to know. I need to know before I go." He should have lied. He had lied so well for so long. He had built an entire life on the capacity to hold a line. "Yes," he said. The word fell out of him the way a stone falls out of a wall when the mortar gives. He heard it hit the floor, and he could not pick it back up. She didn't flinch. She had never flinched. "I knew," she said. His hands tightened around her fingers. "What?" She was 7. She was the kind of child who wanted to be near water. "I knew, when they called us at the hospital, that it had been a phone call, Daniel. I knew it was you. I have known for 8 years. He tried to make his mouth work. He could not. "I forgave you the night it happened. I forgave you when you held me in the driveway. I forgave you every time you brought me flowers, and I pretended it was for no reason." "Why?" His voice broke. He had to start again. "Why didn't you say it?" "Because you needed to forgive yourself first." She let out the smallest breath of a laugh. "I was waiting. You were dying. You've been dying for 2 years. You could have—" "Stop." She said it gently. She said it the way she said stop to Lily when Lily was running too fast down the hallway. "Stop. Look at me." He looked up. "You're asking God for time I already gave you," she said. "You just didn't hear me." He didn't understand. "Every morning, Daniel. Every morning for 8 years. Looking at you across the table, wiping the counter where you stand, watching you draw your little lines on your blueprints. I was asking God to give me one more morning with you. One more breakfast. One more fight about the recycling. One more hearing you breathe loud in the next room. I was begging for one more second chance, for you to look at me and not have this thing between us anymore." "Mira." He couldn't say more. "I let you keep it," she said, "because I loved you more than I loved the truth. And that's my fault, not yours. And if this is the last honesty we get, I'm telling you that's my fault too. I should have asked sooner. I was afraid that if I asked, you'd break, and I needed you whole." He was crying. He hadn't cried in front of her in 8 years. Not really. The little tears that men allow themselves in dark rooms with their sleeves down, but not the real thing. The real thing came now, and it was ugly, and it was loud, and it hurt in his chest in the exact spot where the lie had lived. "I'm sorry," he said. It was not enough. It was the only word he had. "I know," she said. "I have always known." He pressed his face into the sheet beside her hand. The linens were clean and smelled faintly of the same sweet thing he couldn't name. His shoulders shook. She let him. She rested her thin fingers against the back of his neck, on the small knob of bone at the top of his spine, the way she had rested them against Lily's neck when Lily woke from nightmares. After a long time, he lifted his head. "Stay," he said. Some part of him knew this was a cruel thing to ask a dying woman. He asked it anyway. "Stay, please. One more day. One more morning. I don't care if I'm not whole. I don't care what it costs. I will carry it. Just stay." She smiled. The real smile. The one that came from somewhere you cannot rehearse. "Daniel," she said, "I'm not leaving you. I'm not leaving." She lifted her thumb and pressed it against the side of his face, against the wet line of his tears, and wiped him the way she had wiped Lily's face when Lily came in from the rain. "I'm just getting there slower than you." He didn't know what to say. "Draw me a line," she said. "Draw me one of your little lines, the kind you draw on the plans when you want something to hold, the kind you draw at sunrise on a Sunday morning over coffee. Draw me a line and keep drawing it after I'm gone. That's what I want from you." "What line?" he asked. "The one that says, 'He was here. He was here. He was here.'" He understood. He was quiet. He took her hand and pressed her fingers between his own, and he didn't count her breaths. He didn't count. He slept. He sat down in the chair at 3:14 in the morning, and his head tipped back against the wall, and he slept the way men sleep when they have cried until the body has no other choice. His mouth fell open. His hands, folded over his chest, rose and fell with his own breathing, loud, the way Mira said it was loud. He dreamed he was in the hallway of the house they had never finished. The hallway was bright. The door at the end was half open. Mira was sitting in a chair with a book, laughing at something on the page. He woke at 5:42. The monitor changed tone. Not flat, steady. The unbreaking tone that nurses know and husbands know. She was gone. He stood at the side of the bed. He didn't know when he had taken her hand. Her fingers were still cold. A different cold now. The cold of a thing the warmth has left. "Mira," he said. "Mira." He said her name over and over, and he understood the word was not just a word anymore. It was a small stone in a wall he had been building his whole life. She had been inside the wall. Now the wall was open and the wind was in it. A nurse came in. She said something kind and quiet. He didn't hear the words. He heard the tone of them. He felt them the way you feel a hand on a sick child's forehead. He sat down in the chair. He stayed. The sun came up the way it had been doing for 8 years. Indifferent, beautiful, on schedule. He didn't weep. He had wept everything the night before. He sat and held her cold hand and watched the sun move across the floor of the room. And he thought about the line he had been drawing the day Lily died. The line he had never finished. At 7, Quint came on shift. She brought him black coffee in a small cup and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Hale." He said, "Thank you." She said, "Take your time." He said, "I have time." She said, "Yes, you do." He didn't understand. He understood 3 days later when he was standing in his own kitchen and the morning came in through the window above the sink. And he understood that the time Quint meant was not the kind of time you measure. It was the kind of time you let pass through you. He didn't drive home right away. He drove to the cemetery. Small cemetery in the part of town where the trees grew oldest. Grass was wet. He found Lily's stone. Lily Ann Hale. He set the coffee on top of it, then thought better of it and held it in his hand. "Hey, Lily." That was all he had. "Hey." "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was on the phone. I'm sorry the call went long. I'm sorry I was the one who was supposed to be watching you." He said it for himself. He said it because a woman he loved had died in a hospital room a few hours ago, and he could not say it to her. So he was saying it to her daughter, who had been waiting 8 years for him to say it. He stood at the stone for a long time. Then he promised her, in the small, private voice of a man who has finally decided to keep a promise, "Your mother forgave me. I didn't know she forgave me. I'm going to try to deserve it." He drove home. He came into the kitchen. He set his keys on the counter. The keys had a small blue lanyard Lily had braided for him at a school fair 6 years before she died. He had kept it on the keys through the move, through the long gray years, through mornings when he had wanted to throw them into a drawer. He had kept it because he didn't know where else to put it. He set the keys down gently. The recycling was wrong. 2 weeks now. She had been too tired to fix it. He fixed it. He put the paper in the bin and the glass in the bin and pushed the bin to the end of the counter where it always went. He didn't know why that was the first thing he did. He thought maybe it was because for 8 years he had been telling himself he didn't know how to live in this house without her, and she had been telling him he did. And the recycling was an answer he could give her. He sat down at the table. He sat in his chair. He looked at the chair across from him. The chair said her name. He thought about the line Mira had asked for, the one that says, "He was here. He was here. He was here." He went to the drawer where he kept the pens. He turned one, a cheap blue ballpoint, the kind Mira had used for grocery lists, over in his fingers. He pulled a napkin from the roll on the second shelf of the fridge. He set it on the table. He drew a line, a single, soft, slow line across the bottom of the napkin. The kind of line you draw at the bottom of a plan when you want to tell the eye where the world ends and the sky begins. He drew it carefully, with the patience of a man who was no longer pretending to be whole, who was drawing because a woman had asked him to keep drawing, who understood, finally, that the second chance he had begged God for had already been given to him years ago. He drew it for her. He drew it for Lily. He drew it for himself, who had decided, on a cold morning in November, in a kitchen with the recycling fixed and the dish soap smelling faintly of lavender, to become the kind of man Mira had already known he was. He didn't finish the drawing that morning. He didn't need to. He could feel the next morning waiting for him at the table, the way a piece of music waits for the next measure. He sat down at noon. He drew a chair at the kitchen table in the hallway of a house. He drew it the way Mira left hers, slightly turned toward the window, slightly toward someone. He drew a small chair beside it. Then he went to the bedroom. He opened the drawer where Mira kept the things she didn't throw out. He took out a piece of paper she had been writing on, the night before she went into the hospital for the last time. It was a list, not a grocery list, a list of 4 things she wanted him to know. 1. She laughed the same after you as before. You just couldn't hear it. 2. I forgive you twice, once for me, once for her. 3. Keep the recycling wrong on Sundays. I like coming in to fix it. 4. She was here. She was here. She was here. He held the paper. He understood now that she had written the last line for him. He understood she had written it because she knew what line he needed to draw. He folded it. He put it in his breast pocket beside the napkin. He sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't lie down. He sat with the morning going on outside and the house quiet around him, in the way a house is quiet when it has decided to stay full of you. 3 months later, he went back to the cemetery with a small bouquet of grocery store daisies Mira had liked better than the expensive ones. He set them on the stone. A woman pushed a stroller up the path behind him. A child, maybe 2, asleep in the sun. The woman took the stroller to a different row, with the small private dignity of a person who has learned how to stand in a place like this without falling apart. Daniel watched her. He thought, the world is full of us. He thought, we are all of us drawing our lines on napkins at kitchen tables, asking God for an extra minute that He has already arranged for us through the people we could not see. He drove home. He sat down at the table. He took out the napkin from the breast pocket. He opened his laptop and pulled up the blueprints of the house he had been drawing for 20 years. The house Mira had wanted. The house Lily had wanted to see. And he finished it. He didn't draw it the way he had drawn it before. He drew it the way Mira had described it the night before she went to the hospital, with the hallway wide enough for a small child to run down without bumping the walls, with a window at the end that looked out onto a garden, with a door at the end that didn't lock from the outside, because she had said, in our house, no door is a thing a child can't open. He drew it slowly. He made it a house a man could be a father in. In the spring, he built the house. Not alone. With a small crew and a younger architect from the firm who did not know why Mr. Hale insisted on the specifications he did. The wide hallway, the window, the door. Daniel walked the site with the clipboard against his chest, pointing at what he wanted placed. He moved in on a Saturday in May. It was a small house. It had 3 bedrooms. He used one. The smaller one he left empty. The one at the end of the hallway, beside the window that looked out onto the garden, he filled with the things he had kept from Lily. Her books, the stuffed rabbit her grandmother had given her, a small chest of drawings she had done at 4 and 5 and 6. The kind of drawings children do when they are learning how to make the thing they see in their head come out of their hand. And he kept the door open, always, even in winter. The recycling was wrong on Sundays. He did not fix it. He left it wrong because she had liked coming in to fix it, and he had learned that some of the things she had done were not chores at all, but small private rituals, the kind of rituals that keep a house alive in the memory of the woman who made it a home. He sat at his kitchen table most mornings, with his coffee, with his cheap blue ballpoint, with his napkins. He drew. He didn't draw blueprints anymore. He drew small lines. He drew chairs. He drew doors half open. He drew light coming through windows. He drew, sometimes, the suggestion of a small hand on the railing at the top of a stair. He didn't weep when he drew them. He didn't smile either. He just drew. Sometimes, on a Tuesday, he laid down his pen and sat very still and listened to the house. And in the house, if he listened, really listened, the way a man who has stopped counting breaths learns to listen, he could hear, faintly, the small laugh of a child. He could hear, faintly, the small laugh of his wife. He could hear, faintly, the sound of his own breathing, loud, the way she said it was loud. And he understood, finally, that the second chance he had begged God for had not been for her to live. It had been for him to live differently. It had been, in the long and patient arithmetic of a God he had not believed in until the moment he needed him, for one more morning, for one more breakfast, for one more fix of the recycling, for one more hearing her breathe loud in the next room. Exactly the things Mira had been asking for every day for 8 years across the table, with her small hands folded on a quiet napkin. He had not known. He knew now. He sat at the table in the new house in the spring, in the morning in the kitchen, with the lavender dish soap and the small bouquet of grocery store daisies in a glass, and he picked up his cheap blue pen, and he pulled a napkin from the roll. And he drew a line that said, he was here. He drew another line. He was here. Another. He was here. He did not finish. He had a whole life to draw it in. He had a whole morning. He had a whole table. He had a chair across from him, empty, slightly turned toward the window, and a door at the end of the hallway that would never lock from the outside, and a garden he had planted with the same hands that had, 8 years ago, let go of the wrong kind of line. He drew the line slowly. He drew it the way a man draws a line when he knows, finally, that the line was never about the building. The line was about returning to the table. The line was about staying. And he stayed. If this story held you somewhere, if you felt Mira's patience or Daniel's long walk back to himself, leave me a comment and tell me which one. And if you know someone carrying a secret they've never said out loud, send this to them before the morning ends. Some things don't need a 30-minute confession. They need a napkin and a pen and a table to sit at.